Welcome to session 22 of Project Management Professional Training. Today we are going to talk about project planning cycle. Yeah, it will not be a pretty long training, but project planning cycle is something which I wanted to take you through a kind of a refresher thing to understand what we have learned so far. Okay, so this is the part which we have seen in almost most of the training lessons, the process groups versus the knowledge areas, and we have completed thankfully all the knowledge areas now apart from integration, right? We are done with scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholders, all of them in detail. Now, we have come a very long way, and we also have seen the process groups, which we are talking about the five on the top, like initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and closing, right? Now, we also kind of know what happens in initiating, and we definitely know what happens in the planning. We have spent a lot of time in planning, right? Remember, we are yet to get into execution or monitoring, control, and closing, right? Um, so planning is something which we always say that, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, right? So planning is one of the most bulkiest piece in the project management cycle, especially in waterfall, where you have got a fixed scope, time, and cost in the beginning. Those are frozen, and then if you just have to plan it out well, right? Unlike agile, where your scope or your cost or your time, they will be like kind of changing as per the requirements of the program or the success of the product and so on. So if you plan very well, um, and you have spent a good amount of time to create a good project management plan, you do not really have to spend too much time in the execution, or your errors will be very, very less because you have planned it out so well. Your quality checks are there, and you know there is no scope creep. Your schedule is fine. You know what are or which one of them, or what is the critical path in this schedule, and also you are completely well aware about this cost, and you are just working on your CPI and the SPI on the execution piece, right? So execution is not a big deal. I mean, it's a cakewalk if your planning is done very well. And monitoring control is more about change control management, which we're going to talk in detail later, which we call CCB or change control board. And finally, the closing is the phase where it's more about submitting the deliverables to the customer as per the acceptance criteria is done, and then you close out the project, you do the lessons learned, and so on, right? So planning, we have seen a couple of things, right? We have seen scope, schedule, cost, quality, and all that. But if I really want to understand the project planning in PMP, and which is very, very useful from the exam point of view, then I have to take you through the project planning steps. So remember, in project planning is only the process group where we have got a sequential kind of step. Okay, so we have got kind of 24 steps in the project planning which are in sequence. This is unlike your execution or monitoring control or closing or initiating also. They may not be in the sequence, but project planning is definitely in a sequential way. All right. So why do we know, or why do we want to know the sequence in the project planning? The reason is that because most of the questions in your exam, they will not be a very black and white or a binary kind of answer. There will be use cases. And if you want to solve those use cases, then you have to know what sequence planning happens. Okay. And if you know that, if it's fairly, visualized in your mind, you have got the vision in front of you, how the planning goes on, some kind of like picture is there, then it's easy for you to go through the flow of the question. And you can find it out very easily uh, if any of the answers are not correct. Okay, so this is something where I would like you to take a lot of time. I will not like you to memorize the 24 steps. Please do not try that, because if you try that, you will actually not get the point properly. But instead, what I will ask you to do is go through all these points, probably create, small like sheet of paper, like paper cutting, the small cards, and write down the 24 steps. Okay, like 24 cards you prepare, and you write down the 24 steps, and you scramble the cards, and then you try to arrange the cards in the sequence which I'm showing you here. If you play this game every day, at least for 5 days or 6 days, like together, just as a fun game, you will know what planning is about. Okay. And if you've understood planning, trust me, most of the questions in the exam will be very, very simple. Okay, this is one of the tips I wanted to share from the beginning, that you have to know the planning sequence very well. That sequence will give you a total grip on the questions. And then, of course, the knowledge areas. Yeah, you have to know scope, cost, time, quality, and procurement, and stakeholder management, and risk, and all that. That all will be there, and they all are a part and parcel of this training course, right? I mean, we have gone really in deep and detail of each of this knowledge areas, and all the kinds of questions that can come in, the mathematical questions, the formulas, all I have shared. But planning is something which is interesting. So let's go through each of the points like one by one. And like I said, you pause the video, you make a note of the 24 steps in 24 cards, small pieces of paper, just cut them short and then write the steps in pen on each of them, then scramble the cards and then arrange them. Try to do it blindly without looking at the solution. And you will be a master of the planning if you do it multiple times. So first one is that you determine how you will plan for each knowledge area. That's the very first step. When you get into a project plan, you sit together as a team. Now, project planning, remember, it is not done alone by the project manager. The project manager will, most of the time, I will say at least 85 to 90% of the time, will be taking help from the project team or from partner teams or internal team or external teams to develop the plan. Okay. So determine how you will plan for each knowledge area, like how shall I plan for scope or cost or time? Those kind of small brainstorming has to happen with the team. Then second part is you define and you prioritize the requirements. Means you define what are the things which are required in the project or program, and then you prioritize them. Once you have done the point one and two, like you have done the requirement capture from the customer, right? And once you have done that, then you go for the point three, which is create the project scope statement. Now, why will you create the scope statement now? Because remember, you already have got the requirements from the customer or of the program in the project charter, and you also have prioritized the requirements. Okay. Now, once you have created the project scope statement, then you have to assess what to purchase and create procurement documents. Okay, that's the fourth point is a little bit like confusing. Why after the project scope statement itself, I'm straight away getting into purchasing? Because purchasing takes time. Okay, it's not just about generating the purchase order. Every hardware you need for the program will be having its own delivery lead time. Okay, so you have to assess what to purchase and then you create the procurement documents in the fifth step itself. I know that in the real world you will be having a team which will be handling, right? I mean, you will be having a procurement team which will handle the purchase of the hardware or the services. But in this case, just assume that you are the procurement manager as well. Then you determine the planning team. Okay. So once you have done with the purchase and the procurement of the documents, after that you go ahead and you determine what is the project planning team. All right. After you create the planning team, now see the sequence. Because you got the team with you, then you're going to create the WBS, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown structure dictionary. Why? Because you need the team. Without the help of the team, you alone cannot create the work breakdown structure. It needs the engagement of the entire team. Once you have the work breakdown structure in front of you, then you create the activity list. You break down, right? You break down the work into packages and into doable tasks and activities. Once you got the activity, you have to create the network diagram. Once you got the network diagram, the dependence is you can estimate the requirement of the resources based on the network diagram, because there you will know the duration and all that stuff. So you will know that, okay, these are the activities. This is my diagram, how it looks like with the predecessor and the successor and all that. So now you know the resources, how you can place them in each boxes of the network diagram. And finally, you can estimate the activity durations, the man hour, and once you get the man hour, you can also find out the cost, because it's just like You convert the dollar spent per hour and all that, right? Finally, of course, once you have got all the details in the schedule, then you can determine the critical path, which is the longest duration with shortest time, and you develop your schedule. So till this part, it's clear, right? I mean, it's in a nice flow. Like you get the planning team, you create the WPS, an activity, the network diagram, the resource requirements, then activity durations and cost, and finally the critical path. Now here, cost, don't try to confuse that with budget. It's just like the cost of each of the boxes in the network diagram. Okay. And once you develop the schedule, then you will be developing the budget, because budget is not just about the cost. It's cost baseline plus the management reserve, right? Your cost baseline is actually the project cost plus the contingency reserve, which is known by the PM. And once you plus out the cost baseline plus the management reserve, which is not known by the PM, that is called the budget of the program or the project. After that, you will get into the quality standards, basically the QA and the QC part, and you will plan it out. What kind of QA you want to do, what kind of QC you want to do, and so on. Determine all the roles and responsibilities, which means the RACI chart, right? You will create that. And you plan out the communication. See, again, the flow is there. Once you have got all the roles and the responsibilities, then definitely you can plan out the communication, like how the communication channels are there, who are your target audience for the different kind of flash reports which you're going to share with the team or the management or key stakeholders, and of course the engagement of the stakeholders. Then we have got perform risk identification. This is something a big one. So identify risk, analyze risk, and you also plan out the risk response strategy. So this is something a big one, and which you do, and which you start off from your planning stage. And then finally you get into go back iterations, which means that any of the steps, like till the risk, any of the things which you want to iterate or change or something, like based on your risk identification, you want to change like something in the schedule or budget or resource, you can do that. And clear out all the wrinkles, and make sure that you are having a kind of the final piece of the versions. Okay. Now, what is the aim of all this? Why are we doing all this? The aim is this task number 23, which is we are going to get a proper signed off project management plan. Now, you may not have seen a project management plan in your, let's say, your day one programs or projects, because here we work completely on a workfront stencil kind of approach. We have got the activities which are listed out for that particular program. But if you're working for an external client, especially for a service based kind of a company, then you have to have a project plan which is signed off from somebody in your company, the delivery manager, and the delivery manager of the client company. You both will be signing that off, and this is the project plan which is agreed with scope, time, cost, and every detail of the plan which is being frozen. So once you go back, you iterate and all, then you finalize the procurement strategy and the documents, which you started in the initial stage. Like if your step number 4 was like assess what to purchase and create the procurement documents. From there, you're looking into multiple things. You're filling it up with different things which are coming up in your picture, like schedule and resources and all that. Once you fill up your procurement with more details, then you finalize the procurement strategy and the documents. Okay. Then you are going to create the change and configuration management plan, the CC, the change control board, which is going to use the change plan or the format that is going to be created right here, which you are going to use in the execution, not in the execution, but after the execution, which is monitoring and controlling stage. That's the place we are going to mainly use the change control. Once all is done, then you are going to finalize all the management plans. Okay, everything is finalized, and 22 step is like you develop the realistic and sufficient PM plan along with the baselines. Now, what are the baselines in the PM plan? Scope baseline, cost baseline, and schedule baseline, right? These three are the main baselines, and we will see that how can we change baseline in the project. If the need happens, then can the change control board change the scope, time, and cost? Okay. But here you're going to develop the project plan with the baselines and all, and then you gain the approval of the project management plan from the key stakeholders. Once you have done all that, then the important piece, you hold a kickoff meeting. Okay, you do a kickoff meeting with your key stakeholders. That can be internal or external, your sponsor, everybody can be a part of that meeting. And you go through that, okay, we have now finalized the project plan, do a kickoff, kind of, celebrate a little bit and kind of get into all the documents like together and be ready and kicking for the execution phase. Now, again, this can be one of the questions in the exam. So know that the kickoff meeting is not happening in the beginning. Unlike many of the projects which we are doing in our real world, real life, what we do, we do a kickoff meeting in the beginning and from there we start off, right? But as per PMP, the kickoff meeting is happening at the end of the planning cycle. So remember this part, it's very important. It can be a question in the exam where they will give you a use case or something, and from there you have to pick up pick up where is the mistake. And probably you will see the people are doing the kickoff meeting in the beginning of the project planning, which is wrong, because as per the PMIism in the PMP, you have to do it at the end of the project planning. So I always say that the PMP book is pretty much ideal and standard, and you may not follow it in the real life, which is absolutely fine. Whatever works for you in the real life, which is okay. But since if your aim is to pass the exam, you mentally have to be prepared like you are a PMP certified PM, and you work exactly as per the directions which are given in the PMP book. Okay, the PMP book says that your project will be globally distributed with a very high dollar value, at least $1 million, with at least going for 2+ years, very large and complex project. And it will be following this kind of the ideal steps which are given in the book. Okay, so when you answer questions in the exam, I will say kind of do not relate that to real world, because in the real world, we may have many number of steps or many less number of steps or many unique way of doing the project, like whatever suits our needs, right? Sometimes in the company, we may be doing a similar kind of a project for a long time. Let's say IDF expansion. We are doing that for a pretty long time, right? So we don't have any unknowns there. We really don't have to do all these steps in the planning. It's already kind of pre-planned. We just have to go and execute that program, probably raise some purchase orders, get the hardware on site, and we just have to go ahead and rack stack the materials and configure them and connect them. So that's how it works out. But like I said, uh, PMP or PMI exam thinks that the project that will be given in the exam as a use case, that's a very big project, large and complex and unique one. Okay, probably never happened in the company, or maybe once or twice happened in the past, but what you are getting, most of that cannot be just copied from another project. All right, give a good importance into this project planning. Trust me, the more you are thorough with the planning, the more you will be better uh, in knowing the flow and answering a couple of the questions in the exam. Okay, so with that, we came to the end of the project planning steps. I hope you liked the training session. It was a quick and short one. Just wanted to take you through the project planning cycle. But please do your work there, like keep a note of it and practice it multiple times till you become really master of it. So thank you all for watching this. Hope you enjoyed the video. Wish you all a great day and a great time.